Michael, aka the Peace Dealer. Um, I'll be representing the Western Tropical System.
Perfect. And
Peace,
Sambo,
peace,
peace, peace.
peace, family. You can find me on Instagram at Lord Nobunaga, LordNobleNaga. I go by Sambo. Some people know me by Brother Libe, and I'll be representing the Vedic Astrology sidereal side of the world,
Yes,
the dark
sir.
side.
And the dark side. All right, so perfect. So basically, first question, I want to know what's the difference between Vedic astrology, sidereal, versus tropical Western? I don't know who wants
Okay.
to go first.
Um, sure, I can go first. That's totally fine. I don't mean to embellish too much, but first of all, I do appreciate you speaking with me and having this conversation with me. Hope the people watching they'll see this more as a debate where one of us has to be right or wrong, but just a nice discussion. I'm very looking forward to learning more about set sidereal and Vedic, and I hope that I'm able to express my points properly. Personally, I want to make sure we are at least uh, through both arguments, you'll hear from both of us. It's in my hope that the person watching this, you realize that both of these systems are meant to coexist. They're not necessarily meant to be better than the other, or one is right and one is wrong, versus just different perspectives. So your question was basically the difference between the two systems, right? What each one.
Yes.
So basically, I call it sidereal, but sidereal is a system that Vedic is the type of astrology, Western is a type of astrology. Um, when people use Vedic astrology, this could be used in the tropical system or the sidereal system. It's commonly used in the sidereal system. Western astrology uses the tropical system, which is associated with the seasons. But the most important thing to make sense of is basically what is being used. So we are, of course, basing this off of zodiac signs. Um, Zodiac signs are commonly mistaken for star constellations. So, in order to really make sense of this, we definitely need to define what a zodiac sign actually is. Vedic astrologers and Western astrologers all will agree that we use 12 zodiac signs. We'll agree that there's four elements between those signs. There's three modalities, different states, and like I mentioned with the elements. So where we really disagree on is where these points start, right? So of course, relative to the stars that I would say sidereal kind of gets its star from. It's going to be based on a fixed star versus tropical and Western. That's going to really be more based on space and the sign division. So a zodiac sign is basically a mathematical division. It's not necessarily relative to what they were named after, constellations. So you have the hour hand on the clock, which could be the moon or the sun, and then you have the minute hand, which is going to be the moon. So the reason why we have the zodiac signs as a way to divide space is that, of course, uh, every time that minute hand is going to go around 28 days for a lunar cycle, we're going to have, of course, a month that moves forward. And based off of the equinoxes that represent the intersection between the celestial equator of the Earth, which is basically like that midpoint, and then the sun's ecliptic path, these intersections will create the seasons that accounts for this 360-degree math that allows us to start with the equinox relative to the northern or southern hemisphere. And that's just a basic look. So that's going to really show tropical versus, I believe, sidereal. That's going to make that fixed star. the starting point and relative to the precession of the equinoxes with the Earth's point, which is shifted, that's what accounts for, of course, the difference. But it's in my hope that both of us that are speaking to you can show you that neither is right. So it's wrong to say, oh, the sun is in this sign and not this constellation. Both could be true. It is both in that constellation as it's in that sign. And learn,
Mm,
work with both gives you the full picture.
okay. Okay. Sambo, you got a rebuttal for that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Give me 1 second.
Perfect.
And I actually want to say peace to the peace dealer.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I've tuned in. I've seen you've been doing your thing on the scene for a long time with the science, and so I have a respect for any brother who is practicing this science, because this is a very ancestral practice rather than, just something that the Western world has picked up on and tabloids and, magazines and whatnot. This is something that has been left for the ages for individuals like ourselves to utilize to not only guide the people that come to us to decipher this mathematics, but also to further our generations, our future, and also unlocking the truth of our destinies, our karmas, and ultimately, it's about utilizing the tools that God has given,
Right.
the supreme being, God, whatever anybody wants to call it upon. I was gonna say, brother, could you ask the question one more time so I can get a
Okay.
fullness?
So if you had to explain Western versus Vedic, what's the difference, if you can? What's the
Right.
difference between the both of the systems?
Okay, so I just emailed you the PDFs that I wanted to show. I'm not sure if you can make me like a co-host moderator or whatnot.
Let me see.
Because I was gonna utilize that. I'm trying to get in my little presentation mode, you know what I mean? To really give the people, you know,
A clear, yeah, I
the
know what you're talking about.
clear
You know
view of
how
it.
you know how to make yourself a co-host?
I don't know how to do that, but I do know how to share the screen if I am the co-host. It says only the host can share. I don't
You
want
go
to.
to participants, I believe, and then if you click on his name, you can make him a host.
Okay, so
Okay.
you say click on participants and then click on his name. Okay, all right, cool.
There you
All right,
go.
he's a host. All right, you good now, bro?
All right, cool, cool, cool. Let's get started. So, essentially, what the brother was saying is true and indeed, on point. Um, However, I do want to add on actually to what the brother was saying. We do have sidereal astrologers who believe in the whole 13th sign and whatnot. Um, Later in this discussion, I'm sure if a question pops up, we might go into that. I'll give my stance and what Vedic astrologers see as far as that whole 13th sign is concerned. But um, I'm strictly on the Vedic side from the textbook, from the Vedas, actually, from the Mahabharata, dealing with the actual spiritual aspect of what this science is, but also this science, astrology, no matter if you're Western, sidereal, the dark side, the light side, whoever you want to be, this is a science and it has mathematical um, relationships with the planetary bodies. And so before we could even get into astrology, we also have to understand astronomy from the jump. So I'm sure the brother is aware as well, and to the family on who will tune in, these are the planetary cycles. The moon is every 2.5 days, Mercury every 59 days, 88 days is full cycle, 243 days of Venus, 225 is a 243 days, and it's 225 days. So the time is a little backwards relative to Earth. Earth is, of course, 23.9. 365.25 days, Mars 24.6. I'm not going to go down the whole list, but you see it. And so
Okay.
what I did want to bring up is where are we? Yeah. Well, hold on. Cause I got some good stuff up here. And actually shout out to my teacher, Shekam Ra, for this. I just want to get to the more important part instead of holding up the screen. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. So the sidereal day. This is measured based on the time measured for the Earth to rotate once on its axis with reference to a fixed star. The sidereal month in a year also can be measured in the same way. This period of time is from 23 hours and 56 minutes. This is 4 minutes shorter than a tropical day. And then as for a tropical day, this is when we measure the rotation of the Earth from sunrise to sunrise. This time is equivalent to 24 hours. To go in the sidereal year, the time frame it takes for the Earth to complete a revolution in reference to a fixed star, which equates to 36.256 in mean solar days. Tropical year, this is the patches of time. This is the passage of time of passage from one vernal equinox to the next vernal equinox. The vernal equinoctial point recedes 50 point numbers. The tropical year is slightly less than the sidereal year by 20 minutes and 20 seconds, 26 seconds. So I did want to read that in reference to the years, the times, how things start to get the nuances as far as the times and mathematics and everything is concerned, because later, of course, in this, we'll talk about degrees, which is a big point. Ayanamsha is the fixed star. That's the name for it. And so the Ayanamsha, this is the rate at which the point of intersection of the ecliptic and the celestial equator moves in retrograde motion. The correct Ayanamsha is 50.2388475. This measurement is the fundamental difference between tropical systems or the Sayanana system and the sidereal or Nirayana systems of astrology. The Nirayana and Sayanana zodiac were identical in the year 291 ACE. So I'm gonna stop right there and come back. The main difference, and we'll start here, is sidereal or Vedic astrology. You can see it in real time. We all could go outside right now. There's actually astronomy apps. You have Stellarium, you have Stellarium, and there's one on actually iPhone and Android called Skyview. These are astronomy apps that you can literally go outside and see the planetary bodies around you in real time. I've heard before Western astrologers try to say, oh, you know, light moves at a certain rate and time or whatever the case may be. At the end of the day, our sun, when that motherfucker rises, and excuse my, can I curse on here?
Sure. We'll edit it out.
When that motherfucker rises, I'm sorry, this is just how I talk. But when the sun rises, the light is hitting the planet. Even at sunrise, the magnetic field, it wakes up the birds, it wakes up the plant life, it even wakes up humans. You know, men, we experience how the sun has this magnetic field and pulls on us. So there is no way in shape or form that light travels because of the distance or whatever the case that it's not hitting us. So it's the same respective concept for planetary bodies out in space. You can go outside right now and actually see where all of the planets are on the ecliptic. And given that you live in the northern hemisphere of the Earth, northwest hemisphere especially, you can pull out a compass, have a compass on your phone, and you can look south for the ecliptic. And you will find the ecliptic is where the zodiacs travel. And you will find each of the zodiacs depending on the time of the year. So for instance, right now, brother, is in the Western system, is it Scorpio season?
Yeah, we're in the constellation of Libra, but it's in Scorpio season. We're in the zodiac sign of Scorpio. Yeah.
Got you. And so like the brother said, the constellation of Libra. And so you can see, I mean, of course, you can see it at sunrise, but at the same time, you would have to pull it up on Stellarium or something, because of course, when the sun is up, you're not going to actually be able to see the constellation. But you can see the seventh house at sunset. And I forget the time had went back. I just actually checked today. So sunset is now about 5:16, 5:30, depending on where you are. I'm on Eastern time right now, so it's about 5:28. And so when you look to the seventh house, Aries is the seventh house right now, and you can actually see not too far off, about maybe 2-3 hours later, you can see Taurus, because Jupiter is actually in Taurus in our system. And in fact, retrograde planets are a lot brighter than planets that are in regular motion. So you'll see a star and you're like, oh, is that a star? No, that's actually Jupiter that's up in the sky looking so bright. And so that's one of the main things I want to just add on. When it comes to our systems, you have one system, like it said on the PDF, we was in sync 291 years ago, versus now in this time frame, due to precession of the sun, we will even have, you know, I don't want to say argument, but we'll have discussion upon the fact that Western astrologers say we're in Aquarius age. Sidereal or Vedic, we still say we're at the end of the Piscean age. We can go into all the nuances of how those two signs play out, you know, as well. But we say we're at approximately 6 degrees Pisces, and that can be confirmed every March 21st, March 22nd, around the spring equinox and whatnot. And so I'll keep it, you know, to that point right there.
Okay. You had a rebuttal for that piece, dealer, or you want to move on?
Well, just to speak on that real quick,
Okay.
I think that was well explained, for especially for those who aren't really sure the differences. The only distinction that I want to make, because I know he was just speaking on how the system is seen, so I'm not going to say as far as this is what he really thinks, but personally, like just to once again bring into point the distinction, whereas, you know, when we delineate systems and we say in my system the sun is in the zodiac sign of Scorpio, versus I can look outside in the stars right now and see that the sun traveling on the ecliptic is in the constellation of Libra, right? So that creates a huge misconception in that, you know, one system is showing where the stars really are, whereas the other system is showing where the stars aren't. And the misconception is that uh, the tropical system has to do with the divisional space of the signs, and the sidereal has to, you know, is also with the space, but based on the fixed star. So I just wanted to kind of emphasize that. And I'm looking forward to what he has to say, because it's a really good wisdom. And once again, in being able to kind of blend both in their coexistential nature, is how you really get the most of really astrology.
That's true. That's true. So the second question I had, I noticed I studied both. I've been studying Vedic and Western, but you know, I'm leaning more towards Vedic as of right now. But I had a question, the incorporation of outer planets in Western astrology. You guys really emphasize using like Neptune, Pluto, Uranus, and I noticed, what's the deal with the outer planets, and does it really make a difference?
Yeah, that's such a good question. One, outer planets were recently discovered. So when a lot of Vedic principles were really invented, technology was not necessarily invented. Even though you had Dogons who knew of the existence of these, you know, planets. So I don't want to say that it's a new discovery. A lot of these weren't necessarily, you know, I would say the knowledge of Uranus and Neptune post telescope, I think is what makes this more prominent versus back then when we were just looking at the visible stars. So we want to kind of note that. And then, for example, uh, we want to look at the rishis and the nakshatras. Of course, for a tropical system, we base it on the sun, and we have the moon be the minute hand. But in like a Vedic system, the moon is the base, and then we look, of course, at the sunrises. And in seeing how the rishis and the nakshatras work so well together, once again gives you more insight into how these systems can work together. But to answer your question, I feel like the outer planets weren't necessarily as important because they weren't visible.
Mm,
And so that's what, you know, for this system that looks more into it, that may be spoken on versus the others that don't. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Sambo, you had a rebuttal with the outer planets, because in
Yeah,
Vedic astrology, it's not really, unless you're looking at transits. Vedic astrology, they really don't incorporate outer planets.
right. And so the reason, am I still able to share the screen?
Sure. Yeah, you can.
Let me see if it's still, where is the PDF for this one? It was one of these two, or was it that one? Let me see. Okay, where's it? Is that? No, that's not it. Is this it? Oh, yeah. Okay. So on this one, right? Planetary cycles. One, as I've been taught, and one of the main reasons we don't use them, and it's not to say we don't, because actually we do. Um, we don't use them for humans.
Mm.
And the reason is because most humans, and we also have in the Vedic astrology system, I'm not sure if there's any form of a system when it comes to Western, but we have what is known as the Vimshatari Mahadasha system, which is basically, if I could throw an analogy, it's like the chapters of a person's book. And so these chapters are, it's like a time bomb. Maha means great, dasha means time, so the great time period of a person's life. And this is almost like a second birthday for a person. If you would think for an individual experience, what would be some of the most prominent days or prominent points in time throughout your life? Of course, whether you're in the Western or sidereal Vedic side, we all know what the Saturn return, or we might have heard of it. Even if you're not into astrology, you've heard of Saturn returns. You've heard of solar returns. You may have heard of lunar returns. And so these are well, the Vimshatari system is specifically built to track time and how planets are returning on, respectively to your own chart. But as far as the Vimshatari system, it only goes into 120 years before it resets. Because most humans, especially over here in the West, I think we have the lowest life expectancy on the planet, as far as countries is concerned. But most people are living up to maybe 80. So you might get your first Uranus, which is Uranus is every 84 years. So at 84 years, and really is I think it's about 72 years, because I think Neptune is 84 years for the first change in the sign. You'll experience different realities in your own world. If you think about it, a person who's 84 years old, they're like, well, what the fuck is this? We got iPhones, we have cars that drive themselves. People wouldn't have seen this coming, 84 years ago. Same with 72, around the time when Uranus changes signs. And so that's the main reason we don't use those, but we use them in mundane astrology. So for instance, America's chart. And there's many debates on what America's chart truly is, whether you're basing it off of the Continental Congress, or whether you're basing it off of after slavery, whatever, 1865. But you can use America because it is a corporation, but it's also known in legal terms as a body, and it's well over 240 years old. Same for any other country or any other entity of whatnot that has lived for at least enough time to make it to their Pluto return. Not Pluto return, but Pluto changing signs, or any of the outer planets changing signs. So that's the main reason why we don't use it. But there are some Vedic astrologers that do dibble and dabble. Me personally, I don't even use it. But so it's only so much I can say on that part. But yeah,
So when making world predictions, do you implement it? Okay,
absolutely,
perfect.
absolutely.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so
Like for
another.
instance, with
Okay.
America right now, not to cut your wisdom, for instance, America right now, I believe in the Western, I think they say, are peace dealer, are y'all saying that Pluto, where's Pluto right now in y'all system?
29 degrees Capricorn.
Capricorn.
29 degrees Capricorn. So we're 23 degrees backwards.
Right.
from the system. So it would still be Cap. Yeah,
Yep.
it'll be
Yeah, it
early
would still
Cap.
be in Cap.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so another thing, when I was studying Western astrology, this was like a couple years back. Um, I noticed it's a focus on the sun sign. That's like when you if you get a reading from a Western astrologer, they're gonna focus on the sun sign. Versus if you get a reading from a Vedic astrologer, it more focused on the moon sign. What's that about?
Okay. And I really look forward to the Vedic perspective because
Oh, another thing, you want to share anything, Peace Dealer, or
no, that's a good question. At the moment, no, I don't have
okay,
just but appreciate you.
okay,
Um,
bro.
no, it's a really good question because first of all, once again, I was under the impression this is going to be more sidereal versus tropical, which in a sense it is. I personally have no problems with Vedic. I like to use Vedic astrology with tropical calculations, like the nakshatras, the divisional charts, the Vedas, like they're golden. That being said, there is an emphasis on the sun. Some people will say Vedic is more soulful perspective and tropical is more egoic. I think the emphasis on the sun is because of the way we divide and measure light. So we are more tropically focused on the timing and division of sunlight based on these seasonal movements and perspectives. So because I mean, and I like this question because I personally like to focus more on the moon. That's one thing about Vedic astrology I do like. I feel like as someone who uses tropical, I feel like you are more your moon sign than your sun sign. However,
Mm,
to answer your question, the emphasis on the sun is because that is how we base our calendar and how we divide our time majorly on sunlight, which is where, and I would love more insight on this. I'm not too familiar with this, but as the Vedics do, they're going to base it more on the moon, where the sun is going to augment the moon. But of course, we're going to be more used to that moon being the minute hand and the sun being the hour hand, which is why we have 12 months, each month representing different divisions of daylight. And I think that's really why we focus more on the sun or give it more credence.
okay, okay. Sambo.
Yep. And so to answer your question, like the brother said, the moon has so much emphasis in the Vedic system. Um it actually, speaking of what I was just speaking about, the Vimshatari Mahadasha system is one of the reasons for that because it deals with, and actually let me see if I could pull it up. Actually, give me 1 second so I could just kind of show you guys. I'm a graphic person, so I like to kind of see things, you know. This is actually, let's look at Trump since he's
Perfect. That was
the
gonna be a
man
question.
power.
I definitely
Yeah.
wanted you guys to make a prediction on who you guys thought was
Oh,
gonna win.
Peace Dilla, you might have that. Oh, I'm not. With that, I will make my prediction when it come up. We'll talk about that. But so here's the Asha system. You see, I have final boss Donald Trump, and so for instance, Trump. What is his moon sign in our system? Give me 1 second. He
Scorpio.
is Scorpio. He's yeah, he's Scorpio in y'all system as well.
No, he's Sagittarius in our system.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So he's in, all right, and to bring this point into it as well, he would fall in the sector of the celestial canopy where the debates about the 13th sign is.
Right.
In Vedic, he's known as Jayesta moon. And Jayesta is the height of scorpionic energy. He's at the 28th degree, and I think Jayesta starts around 20 degrees and it goes up to the 29th degree. And essentially all the taboos, all of the stereotypes of Scorpio, oh, it's manipulative, oh, it's deceptive, it's sexual, all of that. Jayesta is translated in Sanskrit as the elder. And there's other translations for the word as well. But the elder, meaning literally like the dark side. Jayesta will be like the Darth Vader type of energy. You know, it is co-ruled by Mercury, and that's why it's here. Uh, that's the planet that Trump had um emphasis on coming into this lifetime. You know, he probably was speaking at a very early age. A lot of the time when people come through on a Mercury Dasha, you know, it's connected to, and so this is to go into that as well, so I'm not skipping steps. We have the moon, we all know is ruled by Scorpio. Mars has
Your
Scorpio,
phone
but
breaking up.
his
Hold
moon,
on. You can repeat yourself? I think your phone was losing connection.
okay, am I good now?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. And so Scorpio ruled by Mars, of course. And so that particular portion of Scorpio is co-ruled by Mercury. So for instance, if a person has Mercury in this portion of Scorpio, their intellect is extremely heightened to where they are seeming like an elder as far as their communication and as far as their ability to cunningly put things together. You will be like, how did you know how to do that? Or maybe, you know, it's on elder could have taught them something like that. And so that's the main thing. Vedic focuses on the moon because of the Vimshatari Mahadashas, which is literally like one of the biggest things astrologers, Vedic astrologers might talk about. They might say, what's your moon sign? And then they'll be like, oh, so you're going through this dasha, you know, and the dasha, we'll get into it as well if we have any questions on karma, but it plays out a particular form of your karma depending on where Mercury is posited in a person's chart, or the sun, or the south node, or K2, whatever you want to call it. And so another emphasis on the moon is because we look at the mother. You know, we give respect to the father principle and the mother, the sun and the moon, but the mother is emphasized in India as well. And that's pretty much the main emphasis when it comes to the moon, you know. Also, not to backtrack, but the moon and the mother also deals with the fact that when we are born, you know, we have a psychic connection to our mothers. First, it was the umbilical cord that connected us. Once that was cut, there's still a psychic umbilical cord. And that psychic umbilical cord in astrology can be seen through the 12th house. And that's actually why, if you look at the stars, and I think it's true in both systems,
Yeah.
it goes from the first house to the 12th house. It doesn't go to the second house. And so that 12th house is a significator of the astral cord that binds us to this world. It's literally a thin silver cord in some traditions it's a golden cord, you know, but that is the one space or, you know, connection between the dream world, subconscious, higher realms, reality, and will. And so that particular house is given manifestation through the principle of the moon and the connection of a baby with its mother, and how a mother can even lactate even if the baby is not around. You know, the mother can still lactate because of that psychic connection that is there by way of the moon, by way of 12th house, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah.
Okay. Good insight. Good insight. So another question. Is it possible for both of these sciences to be right? I've heard astrologers say, like newer astrologers, but Western astrologers say Western astrology is the physical, Vedic is the spiritual.
Right.
I always wanted to figure out what do you like from your guys' opinion, what's the deal with that? Is that possible for both sciences to be correct?
So that's what I recently, because when I first started, I did not believe that both sciences could be correct. I had a misunderstanding relative to what we were calling what. So I thought and I thought him pulling up Trump's Scorpio sidereal moon was very relevant, because the way I would have approached it was Well, he can't have a Scorpio moon. His moon is in Sag, and he acts more like a Sag moon. And then we get into subjective interpretations about how I think his moon is more like Sag, and he thinks his moon is more like Scorpio. And then I realized technically he's not lying. The moon really is there in that constellation, just like his moon is in the zodiac sign of Sagittarius. And then that's when I realized, when I used to argue before that, one point is right versus the other, I didn't realize at the moment that they represent different perspectives. So the reason why both sciences can coexist is where, if they wouldn't be able to coexist, if I'm saying that I'm here and I'm in China right now, right? Versus I could be here in Vegas and the person who I'm debating with could be where he is right now. That's how both of them can coexist. So just like Trump's moon is transiting through the constellation of Scorpio, it still marks that zodiacal space of Sagittarius. And as before, where I would argue one is right than the other, we're really just seeing two different interpretations of the same aspect moving through that same space. And
Mm,
with this debate, because it
okay.
wasn't recently I was able to realize how they've coexisted since back then. Of course, back then, as we stated, they were more aligned. And there is a reason for more argument and discourse, because I think once again where we disagree is on what framework we should really look at, right? But whereas before I used to think, oh, you know, you're arguing about the stars being here and I'm arguing about the stars being here. One system isn't looking at the stars and the other system is looking at the stars. So one is looking at a mathematical division of space, the other is taking into account the stars. And this is where, when you realize they're not entirely arguing the same thing, this is why, well, I'm not going to say both could be right, but that's why they don't have to be pitted against each other.
Okay. Okay. Sambo, you got a rebuttal? I know you got a rebuttal for that.
And so what was the can you repeat the question again?
So is it possible for both sciences to be correct?
Okay. So this is where I have to come in and say no.
Okay.
And yes. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna get into the yes. Actually, I'll start with the yes first. Like the brother Priest Dealer, I'm sure he has plenty of clients. I know some notable Western astrologers in the astrology community, but not, and they've done readings for their clients, and oh my God, this was so accurate. This was this, you know. Without a doubt, the Western astrologers make it work. However, the magic they doing to make it work. But what I do want to add to it is, my theory is that when it comes to, and you could say respectively the same thing to a degree, maybe for Vedic, but I think the placebo effect is a part of Western working in a particular way. Because if you're told something your entire life, oh, you're a Leo, your entire life, and then somebody says, oh, you're not a Leo, but you're, well, we know, for instance, in both sciences, that Mercury can't be more than 28 degrees away from the sun.
Yeah.
So, nah, you're not Leo, but your Mercury is in Leo, and you talk like a Leo, and you, as far as a logical perspective is concerned. So, that's where the Leo energy is coming from. And then that could be like, oh, it's perspective. So what the brother was saying, you're right, it is perspective. And to a degree, it can work. Another part of it is so to that degree, yes. But where I say no is looking from a historical point of view. If we go back to Kemet, in Egypt, our ancestors were very, very big on mathematics and science. For instance, the Great Pyramids, as some may know or we all know, is aligned perfectly with the constellation of Orion's belt. Um, Not just the pyramids, but there are so many monuments around the world, around here in America, here in South America, as well as in Egypt, that line up perfectly with constellations. And as far as our ancestors' most recent dynasty prior to the fall or the transitional phase of Egypt, the Amen priesthood was highly emphasized. And the Amen priesthood was all about the Aries age. The Aries age, the ram, as we all know, was the energetic influence that was coming into the planet for 2,500 years. With that energetic influence and with the ritualistic practices that the ancient Kemites partaken in, with the actual everything that was conducted was around the energy of the ram, the energy of the hidden one, known as Amen in Arabic, al-Makfi, which is a word for law, you know. And you see as well, after the priesthood, we come into the age of Pisces, the whole entrance of this Jesus figure. A lot of people see the Jesus logo with the fish on the back of people's cars, because he was the dream, the Pisces. He was the fish and the figurehead of this age. And after the whole 2020, I don't know if I could say it, on YouTube without the whole video getting shut down. But after the whole 2020 situation we know of, a lot of people went from being on Jesus to being somewhere else. But without a doubt, we can't say that Jesus is not still a part of people's consciousness, you know? And so that deals with the fact that the Piscean age is still, the remnants of it, even at the last 6 degrees, are still playing out. Of course, we can pick up on some of them Aquarian, energies and influences, but I'm bringing this up to say that if we as a people, melanated and communities at whole, were is the way that you have some millionaires, billionaires, politicians, Freemasons, Royal Arc degree Freemasons, the whole 90. If we were using it on a real perspective, how we were, we would be somewhere further in our development, as civilization is concerned.
Can you
Say it
repeat
again.
that? Your phone's going, and I don't know if it's just for me, but your phone is going in and out.
Yeah, I didn't hear all
Okay,
that.
my bad on it.
All right.
So I forget the last part. Where did I cut out at?
You said that if things would go farther than if we used a certain measurement.
Gotcha. Thank you. Can I be heard?
Yes,
Yeah,
very.
you heard.
So I was saying we as a civilization would be farther in our overall development, granted that we understood what was actually happening in the heavens to harmonize with these energetic influences. The reason be is, the ancestors was doing so, and prior to the Amen priesthood, prior to the Aries age was the Taurus age, Het Heru, also known as Isis, was the prominent figurehead. That's where even in India, you get Nandi, the bull that Lord Shiva rides upon, the Apis bull in Egypt. Even in certain Jewish practices, the Maruk bull is the figurehead. But we all know the cow might be the most sacred animal on the planet that literally feeds all of humanity. But it was greatly ritualized and given a certain level of fame and respects during the Taurian age. And it was other things, of course, that came with that rather than just the animalistic perspective of it. But it's the reason I say that no, because of the fact that it's too much history prior to us being here in America after diaspora and the fall of our people on an intellectual level, to say that one science is get right or we both can be right when we come from such a great line of mathematical perspectives. And it's also important to make mention of the fact that quote unquote Vedic astrology, a lot of people might say, oh, it's an Indian thing. But um, India was once known as Eastern Ethiopia. And India has actually, it was a particular tribe of people known as the Dravidians who were directly linked to the Kushites. Kush is the area in South Egypt, or really it will be North Egypt, and the area of Sudan. But these people migrated directly to India, and so they were known as Indus Kush. That's where the term comes from. So these are very much, the Indians actually are, a lot of them are, some of them are darker than me. They're very melanated people. Yep. And so without a doubt, that is also our science. I've had clients before where they get caught up in the whole mythology and whatnot, but it's all about your ability to decipher and read into it to really see what's going on. But I say yes and no, but no is my first answer because of the mathematical side of it's a difference, it's a big difference. And because of when you get into the actual practices using the planets, understanding the Mahadasha system, knowing how to ritualize around that, it's a big difference versus the Western system. But I still say a small yes, because there are people that will argue with me, oh, this was this, and I've seen this with my own eyes, and my astrologer told me this. So, people believe what they want to believe, and they have all the right in the world to do so. So I can't take nobody's belief with, but I stick with, when I say, when I come to it.
Can I get a permission to share my screen?
Sure.
Appreciate it. I do kind of want to speak to that because what did you say? Placebo effects are a huge part of many astrology readings. Even on the other side, like I've heard the other side where, oh, your sign switched because your Mercury's in this. So I'm really glad you mentioned that. Barnum statements, cold readings, people who just kind of say vague descriptors. Me personally, I give people dates, specific dates based on tropical, and the dates that I give are accurate. However, I will say one huge misconception is that should we like tropical and Vedic are, or tropical and sidereal are systems that are a part of astrology. So one of the biggest misconceptions is that if you use one or the other, it changes so much, when maybe not the most has changed. For example, regardless of what system we're using, the houses stay the same, the aspects are always still the same. There's certain facets relative to the positional planets of the movement, which is why, two different system type readers can give still accurate readings. This is why both can still kind of, it's just going to really matter now relative to transit based, who's going to be 30 minutes late, who's going to be on time. And I think that's where it's important, where he does mention that you're seeing the stars where they are in the sky. And then whereas I mentioned with our system, we're looking at, of course, the rectification of the precession of the equinoxes, looking at an imaginary space versus the actual stars. So
okay, real quick. So if it's a imaginary space, how are you guys making accurate predictions? Is it more intuitive, like spiritual?
No,
or
it's
because
scientific. This is a really
scientific. Okay, and
this is a really good question. Hey, could you give me the
how do I make you a host again?
I'll just go to participants. Yeah.
Participants, and then
just click my name and then make me a host. But that
it's
was
not
a
giving me.
oh,
It's not. Can more than one people be hosts at the same time?
no,
I think you might have to take me off of it.
Oh, no, my bad. He has to do it. He has to do it.
Oh, he has.
Oh,
okay, he's the host now.
Okay, let me
Okay,
make
I
you
was tripping.
where
But to answer your question, that was a really good question, because thank you. So it being an imaginary space really just divides the time. Once again, it's based on, of course, that ecliptic path and these intersections. Since, of course, these are based off of these divisions, this is why we don't use a fixed star to start it, because we're looking at, of course, how we divide the light and how we divide this passage of time. So that's where consistency. So of course, we're not looking at the actual constellation of Aries. We're looking at that portion of space. But I did want to share something relative that was very important that this brother mentioned, because I wanted to show credence to how in ancient times we did see monuments used to mark, of course, the equinoxes, the solstices. And this is what he was talking about. Some of the earliest rulers of India were Ethiopians. I think that was one of the most important things mentioned. It was the Naga who gave the Aryans the system. Vedas in ancient India actually acknowledge a tropical system, um, but that does not invalidate the sidereal system as well.
Mm.
And I wanted to kind of also show in Babylon how, you know, there was a strong relationship between fixed stars and a tropical year. The astronomy for Nabta has, of course, you know, themes of the solstice and monuments built to honor this, as well as Stonehenge, the Stonehenge equinox, with the pagans and druids. So I just kind of wanted to kind of, you know, reinforce the point that he made as far as what has been used back in the ancient times, or pre, you know, these modern times, and just kind of show credence for both. But yeah, personally,
Okay. Did
and
you have a? What was you gonna say, please?
no, basically, um, I think I was gonna say, yeah, I was gonna say, as far as like, I get where you were coming from when you said no, but also yes, you know, because for me, the yes part is really just because, there isn't like, for example, I was born 20 degrees Gemini. That's going to give me a Taurus sidereal sign. So before I would have got caught up in thinking, oh no, but I feel more like a Gemini. Like you can't convince me I don't have a sun in Gemini. But what I realized is, you know, and some people will say, okay, the Taurus is more my spiritual self, the Gemini is my ego self. But what I realized is that, you know, I'm not more Gemini than Taurus. I'm the tropical Gemini with the sidereal Taurus
Mm.
versus the Gemini that's just going to be Gemini, tropical, and sidereal, versus the Taurus that's going to be tropical and sidereal. So if anything, they can account for more delineations and nuances. But I learned that like one isn't, I'm not more Gemini or less Taurus. It's just this is with the tropical calculations, and then this is based on the side.
Okay. Okay.
But
Sambo, you had a. What was you gonna say?
I do have a question though. So I would personally take the nakshatra that we did for Trump's moon in Scorpio, and
Hmm.
I would base it in the tropical. So I would look at the
Okay.
nakshatra for Saturn.
I've heard astrologers do that.
Yeah,
I've heard
it's like
astrologers.
tropical Vedic or something like that.
Okay,
So
yeah, tropical sidereal.
tropical sidereal. Yeah. So I would want your thoughts on that, and what allows you to really why you like the constellation, or moving with the stars more. Not to say that yours is wrong. I would just really like your insight on that.
I would say come to the dark side.
To
You know,
the dark
because
side.
as soon as you play nakshatras in it,
Yeah.
see it gets to the point, and it's actually a book. I don't know if you have it, but I'm gonna reference it to you, brother, and everybody watching. This is a phenomenal book right here.
That's the 27.
27,
Oh,
yeah,
that's
the
a good one.
27 celestial portals. I think it's
Mm,
backwards on the screen. I don't know if it is, but if it isn't,
I see
this
it.
book is amazing.
Okay.
And what this book does is the real secret behind the 12 star signs revealed by Prash Trivedi. And this book specifically goes into um I've heard astrologers from our side of the fence even say there's no point of saying Aries. You might as well say Ashwini, uh Baharini, and Kritika. Or, for Scorpio, for instance, you might as well say Jayesta, Anuradha, and Vishaka. Because when you
Oh,
get
agreed.
down to the nuances of the sign, it covers the whole thing where, like the brother said, he could be Gemini and somebody could be born in an earlier portion of Gemini, but they may not feel like the same types of Gemini. And so the nakshatras and the constellations, we cut them into 27 in total that amass to about 13.2 degrees. And so it's about 2.5 nakshatras per sign. So that accounts for somebody born in early Leo season. In our system, that would be Magha. Magha is known as the throne of the ancestors, or the Pitris. Pitris mean ancestors. And so it is the side of Leo that deals with the ancestral royalty. This is the side of Leo that was born to rule, but still learning and working out some of the kinks from the ancestral side of things, and depending on where it's placed in the chart. Because just because we don't have planets in certain signs, and I'm sure the brother can attest, we still have these signs playing out. You may not have a planet in Aquarius, but Aquarius is still in your chart. So it still does something. But so does the nakshatras. But when you get down to the nuances of how these planets actually act in the nakshatra, it speaks louder than just saying, "Oh, that's a Leo thing." No, his moon or his sun may be in Uttara Falguni, which is at the end of Leo, which deals with the culmination of the Leo now not being so snobby, because Magha, the early portion of Leo, can be very snobby. It can be very oh, I'm the king, and versus Uttara Falguni is the politician side. There's a story behind it, and that's one of the things he keys in the book. It's amazing because he talks about the mythology, and that's one of the things with Western astrology why I've veered off. Because at first I was studying, Western, but over the years I've veered off, and I've been on Vedic for the last 8 years because of the mythology, the rituals, the practices. We actually just had a holiday, Diwali, which signifies lighting the way to God, because in our system, the sun is debilitated in Libra, and Libra is the worst place for the sun to be. And so it has a lot to deal with igniting your willpower. Friday was a very significant day. Whatever transpired for everybody, no matter what the system is, it dealt with you bringing forth your will into whatever you have going on in your world around you. And if things were not going your way, maybe it's a sign to increase your will. And it's also funny, we have ritual in the Western side of the world without not knowing, but you'll see on social media, it's no nut November. Why would November out of all months be the no nut month? Because the nut, semen, and semen is ruled by Venus in our system, Shukracharya. It deals with your willpower. It's the number one thing for men. If we can learn how to control our phallus, we can rule the world to a degree, And so when the sun is debilitated, this is the perfect time to cultivate and hold on to your jing. They call it in Chinese medicine, to literally increase your vitality, your overall strength, bone matter, all things that deals with the sun. So I hope that had answered the question. I was going a little off, but yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Definitely. Peace, you had any rebuttal or?
I really do like what he said about the mythology, because that's one thing that does turn me off of postmodern Western astrology. It's very riddled with, Greco-Roman mythology, and it kind of just loses, it's just very easy to generalize. We only have the decans. We only have 3 decans. And the nakshatra are just so much more comprehensive into really looking into things. But I will say, one big misconception as well is the purpose for the division is for that 30-degree division of each sign. The constellations aren't 30 degrees each, and there's not just 12 constellations, right? So should we ever talk about a fucus, that's a huge issue, because a fucus is a constellation instead of a zodiac sign. And for it to be treated as a constellation that's not 30 degrees, and even it won't have like the total 30 days, right, to kind of honor that I think brings more nuance as to why, we need to, as long as we don't see zodiac signs as stars, where a fucus is actually a star versus the coded information of a sign, I think just greater awareness about that would just really curb confusion surrounded that.
Mm,
Hmm.
that's true. That's true. I had a question for Sambo. This is from a
Hmm.
Western astrologer. He wanted you to answer this. So he said,
Okay.
explain why the zodiac should be anchored to a star.
Explain why the zodiac should be anchored to a star.
Yes.
Good start.
Are they saying a fixed star as far as like our starting point, or as far as the zodiac signs? Because
The,
each
the,
zodiac.
yeah, to like the zodiac sign. When you look up, why should it
Okay.
be anchored to? Yeah,
So can I share my screen still? I wanted to pull
sure.
back up the PDF
Yeah, I
to
just made a Black Moon. I made you the host, so you'd have to make him the
Okay,
host.
perfect.
to go into it a little bit. So our fixed star right now is Polaris. Polaris is actually one of those stars that you can see. And you might see it a lot and not know what you're looking at if you're not privy to astronomy. But Polaris is in the Little Dipper. So normally we can see the Big Dipper, it's about a rectangular square, got the little hooks going down. And then Polaris is a little bit to the right of that. Uh, yeah, to the right. And that's the little bear. It's the tail of the little bear. And so that's our fixed star. The reason we use it, pull up the PDF to read, because I like to go off the dome, but I also want to just bring the science to it. You see, is this it? Um, okay. Got it. And so we call it the Ayanamsha, but let's start with the precession of the equinoxes. So there is a pull on the Earth from the moon and causes the Earth to be larger at the equator. The unevenness causes the Earth to wobble on its axis. The sun also exerts a pull on the Earth affecting its axis. The torque of the sun and moon on the equator and poles tilts this axis 23.5 degrees. The precession or retrogradation of a planet is equal to 50.2388475 per year. This means every 71.5 or 72 years, the heavens, stars, and constellations recess or move backwards 1 degree. That's why I was saying we're at 6 degrees Pisces, and we'll go a little bit into that. But the Ayanamsha is the fixed star. And so there's different fixed stars that Vedic astrologers use. Personally, as I was initiated in my system, we use Lahiri, which is akin to Polaris being a fixed star. But the Ayanamsha, this is the rate, I read it earlier, but I'll read again. This is the rate at which the point of intersection of the ecliptic and the celestial equator moves in retrogradation motion. The correct Ayanamsha is 50.23. This measurement is the fundamental difference between tropical or Sayanan system and the sidereal or Nirana system of astrology. And so oh, and we'll read retrogression while we're here. The speed of the planet varies and changes over time, depending on its proximity to the sun. This is based on Kepler's second law of planetary motion, which is the fastest and perihelion, I can't even say that word, when the closest to the sun and slowest at its aphelion, or when it's furthest from the sun. And so I wanted to read that before I just go off, wanted to give some pointed science on it. That's the reason, though, we use the fixed star to locate ourselves where we are on the planet. You know, for instance, our great grandmother, ancestor, great auntie Harriet Tubman, she knew where the North Star was. If she knew what
Mm,
a North Star was 100 something years ago, and the stories say she was focusing on that star, why was she focusing on that star? You know what I'm saying? It's
okay.
a mythology, but it's like, hey, it has some form of significance, but it has a lot of significance due to just where time is right now. And like I said, every 72 years we move 1 degree. And so that accounts for, I said earlier, 2,500 years was a zodiac age. I just remember, but it's actually 2,160. Some people say 2,165. That's a full zodiac year. And so if you do times 72 times 12, I think that's the math. My math don't be mathing sometimes, so let me be accurate. 72 times 12. No, that's 864. I'm sorry. 72 times 360 is 25,920. That's a great year in astrology. So then if you do that number divided by 12, you get 2,160. So yeah, once again, every 72 years is 1 degree of the zodiac. The zodiac is 360 degrees. That's how we cut it up in both systems. And 72 years, 1 degree, times 360, 25,000 something divided by that number, 2,160. And so ultimately we use that star to see what zodiac age we are in, and then we account for that star every year around March 21st to see what zodiac age we're in at sunset, which would be the ascendant, to see what is the sun and the constellation in the sky. And if you're just looking from an astronomical perspective, no matter what science you practice, it is Pisces. So yeah.
And
Okay.
I really like that
Give me one
question
second.
being asked personally, as I like the way it was asked. It kind of points to the logic, like what star would you use? Because the signs are divisions of the sun's apparent orbit, right? And so what star would define where they begin and end? Where's the star by 0 degrees Aries, basically? And since the divisions are based off of, the Earth's orbit, you would think it's just more logical to base it between the relationship between the sun and the earth versus an actual star, which is why I do like the question. If there was a star, what would be that star? And I appreciate him for answering that too.
Okay. And I have like 2 more questions, and we're out of here. This is more like a discussion versus like a debate. But what can Vedic the Vedic system learn from the Western system, and what could the Western system learn from the Vedic system?
Oh, I really like that question. I feel like, okay, what can Vedic learn from Western personally? I would say what Vedic can learn from Western is how to apply the principles using the tropical system, like still acknowledging the sidereal system, but also incorporating the tropical just to make certain corrections, to make certain transits, even if you use both concurrently. But I would say, what Vedic can learn from Western is more so, I think, of course, understanding the zodiac sign as it being a divisional space versus star. So we're not really comparing relative to where it's at, because one is at the star, another is just a division. And then what tropical can learn from Vedic, I think, is really the mythology. I love Vedic for the mythology. Like it's very deep. There's a lot of substance there, and it can really.
It goes deep. But Sambo, what's your
Mhm.
what's,
I
what's
did
your
want to
thought?
make mention too, to the last question I wanted to add on. I forgot.
Okay.
A part about the whole fixed star thing, and when it comes to the zodiac, if you actually look at the heavens, um, we make it 360 degrees, but it isn't 360 degrees at all. In fact, I think Pisces is the largest constellation in the sky. And if you actually look at it in the sky, it's huge. It's actually a way to use your hand to actually look at the stars. And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, so if you split your hand like this, right, from your thumb to your pinky finger is about 30 degrees. And so you can literally point your hand to the sky and you can look at a star. No, actually not 30 degrees. I'm sorry, it's about 15. So you could point your hand to the sky and point it at a star from your thumb to your pinky, and you'll know 15 degrees right there. And then I think from about your index to your middle finger is about 5 degrees. And then from your index to about here is about another 10 or something like that. I don't know. The math is off. But there's a way to, look at things. But when it comes to the sky, it's not equal at all. Pisces is huge. Libra is actually one of the smallest constellations. Oh, and the opposite of Pisces, Virgo is also a huge constellation. But what was the question again? If I could.
Yeah. So what could the Vedic system learn from the Western system, and what could the Western system learn from the Vedic system?
What can the Vedic system learn from the Western, and what can the Western learn from the Vedic? The Vedic can learn nothing. That's how I feel. No, I think so. So, all right. So I'll say what the Western can learn from the Vedic, because so like the brother said, the mythology, because we don't have no mythology on the zodiacs over here besides Jesus. If we're being true, we can pin Jesus to be in the Pisces, for modern times. And it's a plethora of different stories, and that's why I had mentioned that book, because it goes into what the zodiac actually, or what energies are actually behind these signs, and so whether you're on the Western side of the fence or the sidereal, there are plenty of people who are like, nah, and this could come from the Western side, I don't feel like a Capricorn because my cousin's a Capricorn and she's all stuck up and shit, and I'm not like that. Well, maybe she's at a particular portion of Capricorn versus you might be in Shravana. Shravana is known as the listening ear. And Shravana is a quieter portion of Capricorn, where somebody else could be at um Uttara
Danista.
Ashada.
Okay.
Dahanista,
Danista.
the upbeat one. Dahanista is moving at the own beat of their drum, and so they can be stuck up, actually. And so yeah, that's the main I think and it also is ritual, Saturdays can be used for the North Node or Rahu in our system, feeding Rahu black lentils, black
Quick
licorice,
question, not to cut you
Go ahead.
off.
Mhm.
Have you looked at, this is one thing I'll give Western astrology credit for, is the overlay with synastry. You
Mhm.
gotta, because I know it's different with matchmaking in Vedic, but from what
Okay.
I've seen, overlay with synastry is usually pretty accurate. Like if somebody's Jupiter is on your moon, you're gonna feel that effect. I've
Absolutely.
seen it.
Absolutely.
What is the whole overlay? Oh, so you're saying putting the charts on top of each other? And so that's
Exactly.
a Western thing?
I believe so. I believe that was incorporated by a Western astrologer. Peace
So
Dealer,
They
can
have
you
dimensional charts in Vedic though, right? Where you
oh
can,
yeah, I think it's called harmonics, if I'm not
okay, all
mistaken.
right. So you talking about, all right, so I'll go into this a little bit. Are you talking about two different people? Because that's actually one of the things I did want to make mention of as well. Um, so we do the same thing as well. For
right.
instance, if I'm doing business, or for instance, if I'm courting with a woman, I'm looking at her chart, I'm putting her chart on top of my chart. Wherever Pisces is, she may have Jupiter in Pisces, I might have Venus in Pisces. Perfect
Mm,
connection for synastry in a way, you know.
that's true.
Um,
I need to be
and
the
so
same
we,
for both systems too.
oh, it's the same.
No, no,
Okay.
like let's say it's different signs. Like if you had Jupiter, Venus in the tropical, it's gonna be Jupiter, Venus in Vedic too. Like it's gonna be
Right,
just
right.
different
Yeah.
signs.
It would just go back 23 degrees. And so, I mean, if like, for instance, if you were at Venus and Pisces at 0 degrees in Western, it would of
Right.
course go back. So it wouldn't be there. But like the brother did say, the aspects are still there,
Okay.
even if it goes back. But the main thing with that is the nakshatras. Each nakshatra, each 27 nakshatra, like I said, it's 2.5 portions of each of the zodiac, all have an animal. And this is known as the Kuta system. And so the Kuta system is how when it comes to synastry, how these animals sexually relate to each other. 27 is an odd number. And so the oddball out is in Sagittarius, it's a mongoose, a male mongoose. And so for each, I can't come off the top of the dome and say it, but starting from Aries, you have in
Yeah,
Ashwin.
each animal has
Yeah,
like
it has
the
this pair.
opposite.
Right.
Yeah. So
So
like
you could
I
have,
think what you
yeah,
gonna say?
I was going to say, for instance, like you could have the male lion in Vishaka,
Okay.
and your lady could have like,
Citra,
uh,
I think, right? Is that the female of
so
the
the lions are Vishaka,
okay.
and No. Vishaka is the tiger. I'm sorry.
Okay,
Vishaka is the
Vishaka is the
male
tiger,
tiger. Vishaka is the male tiger, and I think Chitra is the
the
male
male
lion.
lion.
Yeah.
Vishaka is the male tiger, and I think Anuradha is the female tiger. But for instance, you can have Vishaka, the male tiger, and then for instance, your lady could have Rohini, the female serpent. So if you could imagine a tiger having sex with a cobra, the shit don't work out. You know, it's not saying that they're not a good pair because it's a point system to it as well when it comes to the kutas. But for instance, there could be a male cow versus for instance, it's Sagittarius, the male mongoose.
Mm,
They're not gonna connect, you know. And
okay.
so that's one of the things that has been proven to be extremely accurate, just as far as even sexually being able to relate to your partner, but as
Have you
well as
personally used the Cuda? I think that's what it's called.
I've used the Kuta system, and just from my experience with partners and whatnot, and also seeing my clients, um, it works.
Okay.
I'll say that it works to a point where it's like you will literally see, for instance, like let's give an example. You could see like, for instance, Venus. Venus is the external feminine energy in the chart. The
Mm,
moon will be the internal feminine energy. For instance, your Venus could be in opposition to your lady's Venus. And depending on the nakshatra they're in, well, it really an opposition is going to always be good, actually, to a degree. Venus in opposition to Venus, it's not going to be the worst thing in the world. But let's say your Venus is 8 houses away from your partner's Venus, or let's say it's 6 houses away. 6 houses away would be an enemy sign. 8 houses away will be a form of a hidden enemy, or really more so in a yuckiness. It's like, oh,
mm.
this is something that's going to transform me. It might be good to a degree, but it really depends on the sign and depends on other factors in the chart. But it's ways to look at the sign from the sign, and then when you look at the animal, the kuta that relates to it, is it bringing something auspicious to the relationship or not? And so that's one of the things I wanted to add on as far as what Vedic could teach Western, but it's also the Vimshatari Mahadasha system. Like I said, that is
Mm.
the sages has been using that for over 10,000 years. Even if you go through the Bhagavad Gita, which is the story of the Mahabharat, Bharat being the real name for India, the Mahabharat is the great war of quote unquote India. Even throughout the ancient texts, they talk about dashas. They talk about Krishna, which is one of the prominent figures in Hinduism, or Sanatana Dharma. The dasha schemes that he was going through at the time where he was born. They talk about the Kali Yuga, which a lot of even Western astrologers are aware of the fact that we're in the quote unquote Kali Yuga. But with that, how could you really know so much on it when it comes to the mathematics of the Kali Yuga being a certain portion of time, 432,000 years or something like that. And so even with karma, you know, and that'll go into, let me share my screen with this, one of the screenshot. I showed the Mahadasha, and I want to show we'll pull up Trump's chart again to see. So we have down here, one second. We could put Trump's. Yeah, we could put that on the screen. All right. And so, yeah, the Vimshatari Mahadasha system is amazing. Like I said, the sages have been using that for years to make predictions. Some astrologers don't even care about anything else but Yadasha, and because karma is a Vedic word, and karma is manifested through, of course, the D1, which is this chart right here, the first division. This is the main chart that we look at for both Western and Vedic, because it's ultimately you. But we call it your Prabda karma. And so Prabda is basically like your movie script. For me, Sambo, it would be my movie script. P. Stiller, it would be his Prabda Karma, his first D1. And so it emphasizes, of course, the ascendant, you know, and in Vedic as well, the ascendant is actually extremely important because if you don't have the time, you can look at the chart from the moon, but even with the moon, you could get accurate, but it depends because the moon moves 13.2 degrees every day, which is exactly one nakshatra. And so it's going to give you either between one nakshatra or the other, or if it goes into another sign, that's the case. But the ascendant is amazing because it allows you to get into the divisions of the chart. And so you have the D1, which is your ascendant, the D2, which emphasizes the second house up here is cut off, represents your speech. It's a name for it. I can't name it off the top of my head right now. The D3, which is the Drekana, doesn't deal with, you know, we know the third house to be known as communication, siblings, neighborhoods. But it has to do a lot with your spiritual hands. And when I say that, I mean your ability to put things in order is all instrumented by your way of having hands that can extend outside of your limbs, you know. It goes all the way from the D1, D2, D3. It cuts it, and with the mathematics behind the houses, they cut the chart into different uh mathematical degrees that I can't even explain all of them right now. It goes into like a third of the chart, or a third of the house, a third of the ninth, the second of the ninth house, or whatever the case. But this is the D60. It goes all the way up to the D60, and this will be known as the Akashic records that Western, you know, people we may be familiar with, but in India or the Sanskrit text, it will be known as your Sanchita karma. And so your Sanchita karma is essentially like your credit karma. We know what credit karma is. You know, credit karma is your credit score. What's your credit score looking like? And so your Sanchita karma, which is this chart right here, this is Donald Trump's Sanchita karma, and I'm not going to read it out because, for one, it takes a lot to read out, you know, the D60, and I'm still learning things when it comes to this, you know, and honestly, it's one of those charts that you can look at a person's D60, and from the base knowledge that I have, you know, I could give a synopsis on it, but it's something that you have to learn about your own D60. And I really want to say probably all the way up to around the age of 40 to 50 before you could really delineate somebody else's Sanchita karma, because this is his karmic
Doesn't
credit.
it change like every 2 minutes? The D60.
It is the D60 is down to the seconds. Like
Oh,
your
down to
time
seconds.
has to be accurate as possible. And I think it is every 2 minutes with the D60. And so, for instance, he's Virgo ascendant in the D60. Where does his ascendant lord? His ascendant lord goes to the fifth house, you know. And so, one of the secrets about the fifth house, it's a Dharma house. Dharma means purpose, but it deals a lot with your Puva Punya, and Puva Punya is known as past life merits and gifts. You know, the fifth house is correlated to the womb of a female, and the womb is the holder of intelligence or DNA. You know, and so the fifth house has a lot to do with DNA. Of course, children. Children is what? Your DNA. And so for the D60, that says a lot, just being that he has, you know, his ascended lord in the D60 in the fifth house. But yeah, when it comes to it, that's one of the biggest things is the divisional charts.
I think Western does have division charts, if I'm not
They
mistaken. I
have,
think it's called
yeah, I think the brother
harmonics or
mentioned
something like that.
harmonics.
Yeah,
Yeah, they have
harmonics.
the harmonics. I can't speak too much on it, but that was some of the main things I did want to say. It's the spiritual aspect, you know.
Perfect.
It is Western astrology to a degree is very divorced from having a spiritual system incorporated with inside of it. Whereas Vedic, I mean, it's down to the holidays that they celebrate in India. Everything is correlated to where the stars are, you know.
Peace dealer. Would you agree on that? That Western is more what you said, bro? You said it's more physical?
No, I,
I was saying my fault to cut your wisdom. I was saying it's a lot more divorced from
Okay.
having spiritual practices. You
Okay.
know, even for instance, they still use arranged marriages in India.
Mhm.
Arranged marriages is also, as the brother stated too, with the Dogon. That's still a practice they do in Mali as well. In Mali, they have a form of astrology. Even in Arabic-speaking countries, they do have an Arabic form of astrology. I don't know how much it correlates to Vedic or Western, but you know, the astrological science is still used in cultures, rituals, traditions, and practices and whatnot. So yeah.
Okay. And I do kind of agree with that, only in the sense where I think because Western is just more, you know, I guess influenced by the scientific by scientific fields of study or just the eras in that period. There, especially coming out of the Dark Ages and Roman Catholic influence, there's less of a need to borrow more pagan practices or kind of denote everything to a star. I think it's just going to be more quote unquote scientific, and I mean that in quotes. I feel like there is their own way with which it is incorporated, but I guess just much simpler without the need for, once again, all these divisions and that's another reason why I like to use Vedic, but with tropical placements. If
Okay. Yeah, okay, I see what you're talking about.
so I
Okay,
still
so
I still keep the system and the tradition of the mythology, but then I'm just updating it with the
you're just
tropical.
using the Western coordinates.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Last question because I gotta go. Trump or Kamala? Both you guys. Predictions. Predictions. We need them. I'm probably gonna post this after the elections or before. I don't know yet. Yeah.
You can go first, Peace Dealer.
Personally, they both have North Node in Gemini. If I'm using the
That's Rahu in Vedic for all the listeners.
Rahu, yeah,
Right.
they both have Rahu and Gemini based on the tropical system. Trump has the tropical Gemini sun. Kamala has, I think, even sidereal Gemini rising, but they both kind of share that point. Jupiter is going to be going through her first, so you could see that as her stepping into a new cycle as a revolutionary new woman president. You know what I mean? Trump he has Jupiter on his North Node. So I really can't tell you honestly. Feel like I don't feel like the process is honestly fair and square. I feel like there's a concerted effort for the machine to have Kamala be president. Uh,
Mm.
I feel like even if, like personally, I wish Trump the best. I kind of, if I had to choose who I'd support, I don't really believe any of the virtue signaling the Democratic Party is doing. I think they're just using black people at per usual to vote. But I just, as much as I want to see Trump win, I don't know if he, I don't know. Even though he's favored to, I feel like there's too much concerted effort to see her win. So I
I've
want
heard
to see what she
I've
does.
heard people say this.
Yeah.
But what about you, Sambo?
I totally agree with the brother on that part. To a degree. I do think Trump is gonna win, but like the brother said, I think it's too much. I mean, she
Oh,
she
you think
got
he's gonna win?
yeah, I think I even with the astrology, um, but it's too much media pushing her to win, and it's like the powers that be have more powers than we are aware of.
Mm.
Like Trump said, Kamala was at a dance party with Beyonce. You know what I'm saying? Like she
Okay.
has Beyonce, she had Glorilla just performing, Megan Thee Stallion
Ah,
was shaking ass.
I have a rebuttal for you
That's a
guys.
lot.
I got
but
so I respect you guys' opinion, but based on their charts, who is
I'm
more likely? Who is
can
it
I
towards?
can I share this? Okay, I can still share screen. Let's go. All right, so I don't have Kamala's time, but this is Trump on November 5th. That's the day of the election, correct?
Okay.
And so we have Trump in our system as a Leo ascendant. And so the main thing, and like the brother said too, Jupiter is on his Rahu right here. This is the 10th house. And for people at home that don't know how to look at the chart, this is the first, second, third, fourth, excuse my handwriting, fifth, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And so, essentially, Trump being a Leo ascendant, you can even see that he acts like a Leo ascendant. One of the interesting things with it is it could be a very they have mythology, on Trump. I don't know if y'all heard about the whole Baron Trump's underground journey and whatnot.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, that's some funny shit. Excuse my language.
yeah,
But
yeah.
Magha deals with ancestors. Magha is spelled Magha. What does his hat say? Make America Great Again is Maga, Magha. And so that's just interesting because we do have Saturn in opposition and it's in retrograde to his ascendant, which could cause some contention towards him and the people being against him. And then, like the brother said, Jupiter is conjunct his Rahu, and I think he's going through. Let me see, where is his dasha? Trump is going through a forget what dasha. That's the main thing we look at.
Is it a
Trump is
Mars?
going through he's going through Jupiter.
Oh,
He's going
Jupiter.
through a Jupiter dasha right now, and so his Jupiter is in the second house. Now, and then so we could pull up the chart from looking at it as Gemini. Give me 1 second because I don't have Kamala's chart. It would be good to have her chart. The brother could pull her chart up too, if you wanted to, piece dealer, to kind of delineate. Give me 1 second.
I would just need the.
I don't have her times. I need to find it actually.
That's not
Um,
confirmed. I heard she was a Gemini in both. I think she's like a
well, no,
29
she
degree.
she is. That's why I put it at Gemini.
Okay.
And then one of the things I did want to make mention, in our system, if you don't have a time, you can
Mhm.
always use midnight as the time because the moon only moves 13.2 degrees. So the sun will be where it's at. All the planets, for the most part, will be where it's at. It's just the moon you would have to delineate if you was looking at your own chart or a person's chart to show have their time. You could feel out the moon, literally feel it out. But so from the transit perspective thing, I ain't pull up transits, but in our system, Mars is debilitated right now in Cancer. And so Kamala is a Gemini ascendant. And so with Mars being debilitated and she has Mars in Cancer, I
Mhm.
know that can cause some interesting stuff. And it can also cause her to start lashing out in particular ways, even if she wins or lose. I don't know. She is a cop,
Yeah,
but the North Node or Rahu is in her 10th house. It's in Pisces in our system. And just from a basic perspective, the North Node in the 10th house can cause fame. That's the most famous position you can have in the world. It can cause very interesting things to happen, not unorthodox things, taboo realities to come about. Um, and so, yeah, I don't have her chart. I really couldn't do the best with that. And then
Okay.
Jupiter is in her 12th house. That's what I know as well. Just looking from Gemini, where else is everything at? Um, where is Libra? Sun will be in her 5th house around that time. We have, I think Venus will be in Sagittarius around the 5th as well. So yeah, I don't have her chart, but if the brother has it, he could pull it up. But
but
I'm going for Trump.
and to answer your question, the rebuttal based on the actual chart, I'm gonna go with what he said because Jupiter will be on the Rahu. I think that's
Mm.
one of the only thing that can give it a run for its money is her having the rising on her Rahu. Like that is somewhat significant. But since it falls in that 12th house portion and it's gonna be on his Rahu exact, I think that's a good indicator. I think if things are going fair and square, there's no reason why it shouldn't win. It's almost like it's destined to.
Cool, cool. Well, guys, this was very informative. I want to say thank you to Peace Dealer. I've been following you for a while now, so it's an honor to get both of you guys. And Sambo, I actually got a consultation from Shot Camera. It was a really good
That's
consultation.
my teacher.
Yeah, I
Yes,
know,
sir.
I know. I'm gonna have to
Yes,
enroll in some of y'all classes because I'm still learning. I'm still a student.
yes,
But
sir.
I definitely want to thank both of you guys. You guys want? I'm gonna email you the video. I don't know how long it takes Zoom to process these videos. It should take like a day, I think. But I'm gonna send y'all that, and yeah, we
Okay.
can go from there. It's still a
Appreciate it.
lot. It's still a lot. We haven't discussed, but you know, we didn't have a lot of time.
We could come back next time. We could do something else for it. I definitely want to say thank you to the Peace Dealer as well. I've been tuned in for a while as well. You've been doing your thing with it. So
And
peace to you.
I'll definitely look you up on Instagram, like you mentioned.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate that.
Peace, definitely. I respect, guys. Take it easy. Safety.
Yes, sir. Peace.
Solid.